amidst all of the crazy things going on in the world right now, the fucked up shit that they're trying to use to distract you from the fact that Into the Radius 2 has officially been announced and it's going to release into early access on the 24th of July. You can decide to go read the entire dev diary right now if you want to. It's dev diary number 14. You can access it on Steam or Reddit, or you can just listen to me summarize the entire dev diary in this video right now. You're still here? Sweet. Let's jump into this dev diary. Alright, so let's address a couple of things again, just to clarify some stuff. The early access launch of Into the Radius 2 isn't going to have anywhere near the amount of content in it that Into the Radius 1 has currently. That's obviously just because Into the Radius 1 got a whole set of major and minor updates after its early access launch, and it's a complete game now. And Into the Radius 2 is going to follow this exact same method. Into the Radius 2 is eventually going to develop into a game that has just as much content as the original. Alright, so now what can we expect from the locations in Into the Radius 2? Well, there's going to be a tutorial location, and the devs are calling it Heroes World. Initially, it will only contain a pure tutorial, but apparently there's going to be a full narrative added to it later on in development. There's also going to be a small location offering a few hours of gameplay, and this is going to be the environment that you explore in the first couple of missions, and then we are going to have access to a giant first main Radius location with a very unique theme, and it's going to be significantly larger and more complex than any previous Into the Radius locations that were in Into the Radius 1. So we're going to be getting a full-scale Into the Radius experience with a ton of new updates and improvements like jumping, artifact nests, new anomalies, and enemies, and the main missions alone are going to offer 5 to 10 hours of gameplay in Into the Radius 2's current form. There is also going to be a fully revamped next generation explore base. We saw it, buddy, in previous dev diaries. It looks freaking sweet. Hopefully it's going to make the gameplay experience more interesting, convenient, and it's going to reveal storyline changes that are going to unfold in the future of Into the Radius 2's development. Obviously, not all functionalities are going to be available during early access, and it's going to be updated in the future, don't worry. If you are interested in hearing more about the details of that, well, I made a video on that exact dev diary, so go check it out, it's right here. The locations of the Pechorsk anomaly are going to be filled with new updated entities and a basic set of enemies. As the game develops, these enemies and entities will be refined and tuned along with the feedback that the devs get from the community. So, progression in early access. They're going to be basic implementation of mission systems with infrastructure, like a special terminal for receiving and submitting committee tasks, aka like artifacts, I'm assuming. There's going to be a device for issuing and accepting these items. There's going to be almost a dozen top priority missions and several dozen side missions. Missions will have a limited number of stages and conditions, but they're going to be expanded and supplemented with updates. As you complete missions, you can expect several security level increases. And this is going to grant you access to new guns, locations, top priority missions. Basically all of the content in the initial early access version is going to have full progression, similar to what will be in the released version of the game. Now let's talk a little bit more about the good stuff, okay? Weapons. This is big news. When you complete committee tasks, we're going to get access to like a dozen different guns. This is way more than we thought we were going to get. They definitely did not say that we were going to get this many weapons, and some of these guns are going to be in like 2 to 3 different configurations. So I'm thinking that these are the different tiers of specific guns or like variants that you can get by progressing and achieving higher security levels. All of the guns are enhanced with new, more detailed animations, textures. You can now chamber around directly when the weapon is locked back. Some of the guns are even going to have a couple of magazine options, and basic attachments can be mounted on the guns. During early access, ammo is only going to be available in standard and tracer variants. And obviously, boys, in addition to weapons, we're going to be getting a lot of new equipment. There's going to be immediately a basic set of updated Explorer gear items, like an artifact detector, probes, several new backpack types, a ton of new chest rigs, I think 6 different types with different configurations depending on whether or not you're right or left-handed. Flashlights, injectors, other small items. We get an electric tablet map, and basically just everything is pimped out. It's brand new, dude, high tech. but in the initial early access version, they will be without upgrades. Next up, artifacts. During expeditions into the Petrovsk Anomaly, we're going to be finding these things called nests, and they're going to have various artifacts in them. There's a new item called a radius altered item. I'm assuming that these are just going to be random items that have been affected by the radius, scattered throughout buildings and other places where you can loot. They're also going to be special quest artifacts and items, and of course, we're going to be getting an endless supply of cigarettes and cookies from the UNPSC. Just kidding, you still have to buy them, but they are there if you want to eat cookies and smoke cigarettes. Alright boys, and here are a few things not to expect for the early access version of Into the Radius 2. There aren't going to be any story moments or episodes. Gameplay is coming first. Alright, narrative elements are already present in the visual design in the game's world, and the story is going to continue to be expanded in future updates. In early access, some game systems, kind of like guns getting worn down, us having to clean them and repair them, and any customization of guns is not going to be present, but we can look forward to these things in future updates for Into the Radius 2. Hunger and its recovery are not going to be present. Armor and helmets won't be present. Completely new enemy types are not going to be present. Only the most basic version of the Tide is going to be present in the game. We're not going to have a laboratory at the base yet. Artifact with perks aren't going to be present yet, and that whole processing of artifacts with perks is going to be added later on. Difficulty settings also are not going to be present. Lastly, a stable co-op mode with fully functional radios will not be present. As mentioned in previous dev diaries, it's the biggest technical challenge for them. Co-op and multiplayer are extremely complicated in VR, but the devs are going to continue to work on a reliable co-op option for the game until the game's full release. And this is an important note. The devs aren't guaranteeing that in early access, as they update the game, it will continue to support previous build saves. So as the game gets updated during early access, it is a very serious possibility that you might lose all of your progress. And apparently long in advance, the devs want us to know that we're probably going to need to restart fresh after the full release of the game. This is a little bit of a bummer, but hopefully these new updates are going to continue to make the game feel fresh and new every update, so it won't be that bad having to play through some of the regular missions. The system requirements to play Into the Radius 2 on your PC are going to be adjusted in the future, but as of right now for early access, minimum requirements are an i5 7600K or a Ryzen 5 3600 CPU with a graphics card that is at least an RTX 2060 with 16 gigabytes of RAM. However, if you really want to just smash through this game and play on decent graphics, recommended specs for your PC is an i5 8600K or a Ryzen 5 5600, and then an RTX 3070 graphics card and 16 gigabytes of RAM. The feedback that we give the devs for Into the Radius 2's early access launch is going to be invaluable to them. Early access is the best opportunity for us to give regular feedback and even potentially get some crazy shit put into the game that the devs hadn't even anticipated that the community wanted. This is also a super helpful way for the devs to analyze our thoughts on the game, draw conclusions from it, and adjust their plans accordingly. So make sure you guys join the Discord and Reddit so that you can give your feedback during the early access phases of Into the Radius 2. Share your thoughts, ask some questions, and basically make Into the Radius 2 the best game that it can possibly be. But anyways, boys, that is the end of the video. Into the Radius 2 coming out on the 24th, buddy, of July. We got a couple weeks and then shit's gonna start to get crazy. I hope you boys are excited for it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to stay updated on more Into the Radius 2 news. I also just make a bunch of other videos on VR games. Leave a comment if you want to, but most importantly, have an amazing weekend, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.